Oh, all right, everyone. Hi there. Um, welcome. Y'all can see me. I turned off my video, but I'm sharing my screen because they're going to do a bunch of things here. Yes, as you said, Justin said, I am from Integrating Magic, just starting up a company here. Um, this this kind of goes right with who I am and what I do. I at one point in my life, I was a magician. I did kids' birthday party shows and such. I have a lot of history books of magic behind me, and so it's pretty awesome. And then of course the integration is part of it. I am really interested in bringing JavaScript to the FileMaker community. I have been for quite a few years now, and I think I can make a business out of this where it's I recognize that there's a lot of hesitancy to understand and work with JavaScript because of a lot of factors, timing and what to learn and all that stuff. And we're going to talk about that. Um, since I have spent a lot of time in it, I want to be the person that can build widgets for people, no matter what kind of person needs one. If you as a developer have a client that needs a problem solved, and JavaScript is a good way to do that. And but you don't have time, I can be the person to do that. I love working in FileMaker. I would actually be okay if I didn't have to, design another layout anymore, and I could just focus on building a calendar or a Gantt chart or whatever for clients. So that's my business. That's who I am. And also, not only building widgets, but providing support in the community for learning JavaScript. And I'll show you that stuff at the end, just to let you know. But one thing I like to do in my sessions is some sort of little interactive poll. So you're welcome to do this. You don't have to, but it's kind of fun. If you take your phone and you scan the QR code there, it'll log you into just a quick set of questions that I have for us as we go through this. I'd encourage you to do it. It's a little bit of fun and brings some interactivity to this. So you can go to slido.com and type in this code, or you can just scan it with your phone, and that will work. And while you're logging in, go ahead and fill out this survey. There should be some questions on there for you at this moment. I'm going to do it here too, so I can see it. Let's see. Yep, there we go. Okay, so there's like just 3 questions there. You can go ahead and, if you would, as you log in, fill them out. This will help you get used to it. There we go. Okay. How many of us are here today? 17. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me and being part of this today. So there we go. We have about half of us so far have answered, and we're kind of about half. Okay. Very nice. I'll do it. Let's see. There we go. All right. Cool. I'll wait about a couple more seconds on this one, and then we'll go through the questions. It's my complete opinion nowadays that JavaScript is an essential tool for us FileMaker developers. There are thousands of use cases that we solve every day with our clients, for our clients, that could also be solved with JavaScript. And in some cases, It's easier to solve it with JavaScript than it is FileMaker. Again, I love FileMaker, but JavaScript in some cases is the way to go. And I think it's all about, what kind of value you can bring to your clients. If they're interested in interactivity, if they're interested in like animation kind of things. And if you do not want to build scripts to sort the columns of your list views every single time you build a list view, it's worth looking at JavaScript and understanding how to use that. So we have a good mix of people here. Some people are using it, but a third of us have not used it at all. That's okay, because I understand that, and I think the next questions speak to that. Why would a FileMaker developer want to use JavaScript? Enter a word or phrase. There you go. Nice. That's some great ideas there. Impossible to possible, extend the capabilities, more polished apps. Yep. Do what FileMaker can't. That's right. Very good. All right. So this is a nice representation of why we would use it, but why would we not want to use it? All right. Let's see here. Having to learn a new programming language. Client difficulties, no time to learn. Language me to me. Difficult.
I'm not a very good typist.
Yeah. It's hard to write on an iOS device. I learned from Klaus. Shouldn't have to ever do that. Good. Okay. Well, that's good. Thank you for those opinions. Appreciate that. Yes. There's a lot of advantages to it, but there's also a lot of roadblocks in our way. And that's what I'm here to talk to you today about some of the remaining roadblocks that are still present in FileMaker when we're working with JavaScript. FileMaker 19 has done a lot to remove as many of the roadblocks as they could. There's still a few more, but I think I found a way to remove those, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to speak to you today about the JavaScript development environment. By the way, in this app here, there's a Q&A section. I would love for you, anytime you have a question, to put it here, and I will start it up. I will pause every couple seconds, every couple slides or so, to see if there's any questions. So just gives you a chance to kind of write your question out and think through it, and post it, so that you anything you see, you can question, you can write a statement, whatever you want about it. So this JavaScript development environment has the keywords develop, render, and deploy right here. And let me just show you what it is. Here is the JavaScript development environment. Whoa, I'm big. Better reduce that side. There we go. Ooh. This is the JavaScript development environment. It's a place where I can write JavaScript and I can see what I'm writing happen and immediately show up in a FileMaker file. Now, this environment comes with a file, which we'll look at, but this can easily be connected to a client file, so that you're working with their actual data. You are working with any constraints that a client file has, and you're still able to do the development. Back when I had first started working in FileMaker in JavaScript, I wrote a web viewer integrations library all in FileMaker, and I used a bunch of fields. I used a calculation that did substitutions, that took the JavaScript out of this field and put it into a calculation that then the web viewer could render. That was one of the worst ways to do it. At least now, when I look back at it, it certainly worked back then, and it did some good things. But now that I spend a lot of my days working in JavaScript, I can't imagine not having what we see over here in VS Code, the color coding, the indentation. I can't imagine having that anymore. And this is just not possible in FileMaker, in a FileMaker text field. So you can see here what I'm doing on the right side there shows up in the FileMaker file immediately. So I can gauge the work that I'm doing. I can see the bugs that I'm working on, that I'm developing. All right, so let's see here. Did I have? Yeah, I'll just ask this quickly here. What did you notice about what was happening in that demonstration? Just put a couple words out there that describes what you saw.
Well, I saw that you used the FileMaker JSON, the FileMaker execute JSON function, whatever it's called, to actually go and get data from FileMaker and insert it into as data for your JavaScript operation. I'd like to learn a bit more about how that works at some point, and how it returns the data and how you'd use that in place of a JavaScript data object or whatever.
Okay, getting data from FileMaker and back to FileMaker, right?
Yeah, I've used Chart.js quite a bit with one of my clients, and I've done it the way you said before. I've created what to insert into a JavaScript.
Yep.
I've actually created an endpoint on a PHP server to actually process that and call it and return the chart. You return the HTML to my web viewer, but there would probably be a better way to do it now, I think, with that capability.
There is, very much so. All right, good. So yeah, so we saw, in my opinion, and one of the better ways to do this, we saw the live interaction. Yes, we did have to load, refresh it in development. If we make big changes to the JavaScript, the FileMaker file web viewer could lose it, and that's not always the case, and I'll show you that in a bit. But yeah, there's a lot of ideas there. Very nice. All right, so let's move on. And I don't see any questions, so we're going to keep on going. Oh wow, a lot more things coming in. Very nice. So this JavaScript development environment is a set of tools that we can use together to write JavaScript in FileMaker in the easiest way possible. And that's my certainly biased opinion, I'm sure. But I've also have experienced every way of writing JavaScript for FileMaker. And this is, in my experience, this is the easiest way. It's a set of tools. It uses VS Code, which we'll look at in a minute. It uses FileMaker. It uses a connection between them. And I'll demonstrate that in a bit. It solves three problems that I feel are the three remaining problems to working with JavaScript in FileMaker. It solves the developing problem, how to develop, how to write the code for how to write the JavaScript. It also solves the rendering problem. As you noticed, when I wrote something over in VS Code there, the changes were updated in FileMaker. Yes, I did have to rerun the load chart script, but again, I think we can find a better way to do that, or a different way. It's not better. And then the final one is the deploy problem. Yeah, it's really nice to work in a code editor like VS Code, but the question is, how do you get that over there? So let's take a look at these in particular, and I kind of went through them, but how do I write JavaScript in FileMaker, for FileMaker? The key to this is that I am using I'm using a code editor right above me. We'll look at that in a minute. And it helps me it does all of the work of writing JavaScript very well, so that I see my mistakes. I see when I forget a semicolon or a closing brace or whatever. How do I see what I'm developing? Well, we saw that in the demonstration where everything I wrote over in the file, in the VS Code file, in the JavaScript, eventually rendered in over there. And the last question is, how do I get the code into the app? What this does not answer is, what is the JavaScript I should learn? Okay. That question is not part of this. This JavaScript library, the environment assumes that you know JavaScript or know a little bit. You don't have to know the whole thing. You don't have to have a master's in it. But you need to know some of it to be able to work in this environment. Luckily, I'm starting to answer this question. And for quite a few years, I have worked on this answer. And that is this cool little JavaScripted FileMaker learning path. A couple of years ago now, I realized that as a FileMaker developer, the stuff that I do in JavaScript every day is pretty similar to what I'm doing in FileMaker every day. And you can see here on this side, we've got 5 use cases that go down this sort of column here. And it's a little bit hard to see. I'll just describe them. One is called perform actions. We do that in FileMaker. We create buttons, we create script triggers that run different scripts. In JavaScript, we do the same thing, and this is what it's called. So the branches from that perform actions shows you what in JavaScript we do and what you can learn. So in what I'm trying to do is develop training materials and a community where we can talk about this and say, here's FileMaker developer, here's how you work with JavaScript to do this. The middle one there is manipulate data. And by far, it's the biggest one because we work with data. That's the whole point of a database, is to work with, render, manipulate data. And we do that in FileMaker. We write scripts to change calculations or change values and fields, to add records and so forth. JavaScript provides a lot of ways for us to manipulate data. And I'll demonstrate some of that here too. I can take the results of the execute data API script step that is new in 19, and I can turn it into something that a chart will be able to render, or a data tables will be able to show. So we manipulate the data in some way. The last 3 are load data, retrieve data, and update the web viewer. We do these things in FileMaker. We load data into portals or records, views, or lists. We retrieve it. We get data from elsewhere in the system, and we update the layout based on different conditions. So this learning path helps a FileMaker developer know what parts of JavaScript to focus on, so that she is able to be efficient. I helped Todd Geist write the add-ons. I've probably developed 50 or 60 different widgets for that many different clients. This is the same stuff I use over and over and over. So this is what I would recommend people learn and focus on. And I'll show some possible resources later on. All right, let's see if we have any questions. Let's see, doesn't look like it yet, but that's okay. We don't want that, we want this. There we go, no questions yet, that's okay. We'll keep on going. Feel free at any time to write, to enter your question. All right, what is it doing? Sorry. Just stop that for now. Okay. I have too many different screens that I'm working with. All right, so let's look at this develop idea. I've mentioned it many times already, but here's really the basics of it. We're using VS Code to write our JavaScript. We're not using a FileMaker field, writing text. We're not using a layout object that's off screen in layout mode. We're using a proper code editor. It's almost impossible to write JavaScript without a code editor. People who are full-time JavaScript developers use code editors because it does so much for you. Here's just one thing it does for you. As you start to write a keyword in JavaScript, it will actually bring up an autocomplete list of the words that you might be asking for. In this case, I'm trying to write a function. And so it's telling me that first line that, that's the statement that I want. That is beautiful. And it does a ton of other things. And you can kind of see that here. And I didn't go into great detail about this, unfortunately, but you can see the color coding. I didn't zoom in here. You can see the color coding. You can see the auto formatting, the indentations. Everything is perfectly aligned where it should be within the proper structure and within a parentheses or a curly brace or a bracket or whatever. So this is the most efficient way to write. The stumbling block of writing JavaScript is solved using a code editor. So I would recommend and will advocate for using VS Code. It's free and it's incredibly powerful for what we need it to do. All right. So this is working with that. We're also working with FileMaker in that there's a script in the environment that comes with this called Load Web Viewer. This does the work of loading the code into the web viewer so that it can be seen. And this is why in the demonstration you saw, the web viewer would blank out once in a while, because when I save it in VS Code, FileMaker doesn't pick up on that because I'm loading it via a variable and a script step there. So line 4 there has the name of the web viewer that's on the layout. Line 6 there tells the script where to get the code from, whether we're using a local host, which I'll talk about in a bit, or an actual FileMaker field where the code is stored after it's been deployed. Line 7 there is telling this, hey, I want you to go find the function load chart. Line 9 and 10 goes to get data from the database to load into the chart. And then skipping down to line 16, we see there that is using perform JavaScript in a web viewer, that new script step that grabs the web viewer name, grabs the function name, and sends the JSON in so that it can be used. So this script here, as part of the development environment, does all the work to connect, does half of the work to connect FileMaker and the VS Code that I'm writing, the JavaScript that I'm writing. Don't have any questions yet, so let's keep on going. Rendering. This is a big problem. When I was working with JavaScript in FileMaker, if I would write the code in a layout object off to the side and then reference that object in the web viewer, I couldn't see what I was actually writing. I couldn't see the fruits of it until I went into browse mode. And to me, that was just completely inefficient. So we're using JavaScript here and the connection between FileMaker and JavaScript to show what I'm rendering at a moment's notice, or at least after a quick button press or a command press. Or, I haven't even thought of this yet, but using Siri now in 19.4, I could say, hey, JS dev load, or hey, Siri, reload web viewer or something like that. That would be kind of interesting. But in this example here, I was working on this form for a client and I was just setting it up in my dev environment. And I wanted to see how this would work fully. So I copied the code, and that's a lot of what I do is copy code from websites and from documentation. And the code there, and you can see it there where the arrow is pointing, it had a placeholder for this last name field called, and the letters were LOU. So that was just the placeholder that came in the documentation. Well, after I pasted the code in there and I ran the web viewer, it was like, okay, you've got this placeholder text in there. Well, I didn't want that. So I removed the placeholder text in line 46 there of the VS Code. I pressed Command S and immediately it disappeared from the last name field over there. So I'm able to see the results of my coding, whether it's beautifully rendered forms or bugs. I'm able to see that in my FileMaker web viewer. All right, let's see. Good, no questions yet. Last one is deploying. How do I get the code into the app? So this is a very good question because we have to finish this. It's beautiful that we are able to code in VS Code. It's beautiful that we can see what we're writing in JavaScript in the web viewer. But if I'm done with the development and I've got my chart perfect or whatever it is, I want to be able to push that into the app and have it ready for every user to look at. Right now, when I'm doing development, only I can see the code because I'm the only one that has the code in VS Code. I'm the only one running this development server, which I'll talk about. And I'm the only one that can see it. So I need to deploy the code, even to test. Once I'm done with what I think is the answer to the problem or the solution, I'll deploy it, let the client see what it is, and see if there's any feedback to change it. So what this environment does is it takes all of the code over there in VS Code and knows how it's beautiful. It's got color coding. There's lots of space, lots of indents. This environment destroys all of that and puts all of the code inside of a text field in a single string, and the code is minified. There's no spaces, there's no returns, and it's shrunk down as much as possible. This environment has some built-in tooling to it that minifies the code, that changes long variable names to short variable names, because that's just smaller, and thus the file size or the character count in this case is smaller. Now that's really important. Minifying is really important on the web because this code has to pull from a server and then render in your browser. For us FileMaker developers, it's pretty instant, even no matter how long the text is in this, but it still runs through that same process of minifying the code because we do want it to be as small as possible. So these are the three problems solved: develop, render, deploy. And as a person who uses FileMaker and JavaScript every day, I feel like these were the last three problems until Claris gives us a way to write JavaScript inside of the FileMaker in layout mode, and we're in a inspector or something, which I don't think would actually work really well. So maybe I don't want to suggest that. But this is the best way to do it for us. It's the most efficient. It gets the job done really quickly, and it solves the client problems, which is ultimately what we want. Oh, no questions. Does anybody have any out loud questions they want to throw out?
Yeah, that process of transferring your code from VS Code to FileMaker, could you detail that a little more of how that actually works?
Sure thing. I'm gonna demo this whole thing.
Okay.
I'm gonna demo the whole process from start to finish, so you can see every moment of it.
Perfect.
Oh, here's a question. Do you use FileMaker as a JDBC? To be honest, I have never used a JDBC, so I barely know what it is. I think I only know it when but I think maybe I'm understanding now that I talk about it. But are you asking, do you use FileMaker as a backend source for a web viewer?
Yeah, how do you build the connection between the JavaScript and the FileMaker? So you have to use it as a data source.
Yeah, so on a web page, that certainly could be possible. In fact, I've got a couple proposals out to people that we're going to do that very thing. We're going to take FileMaker layouts and we're going to turn them into web pages, and we're going to still use FileMaker as the data source. It's completely possible using the execute data API scripts, not script steps, using the execute data API functionality that we can call from FileMaker server and get data in. So yeah, it's completely possible. It's a little bit more complex, a little bit, it's way outside side of what I'll demonstrate today. But it completely could be done. In fact, when I worked at Proofgeist, I had a client that we took all of their FileMaker layouts and we redid them in JavaScript using React. And we built them for WebDirect. So we were still using FileMaker. They would still log into a FileMaker file in WebDirect, but they were not looking at a layout. They were looking at a web viewer, one web viewer for all of the different pages and layouts that they needed. So yeah, it could completely be done.
So you mean you are still using the JavaScript in FileMaker itself? So the JavaScript is not independent of the FileMaker?
In this scenario, what I'm describing here is I'm using, let me go back a screen here. I'm writing my JavaScript, I'm pushing it into FileMaker, and I'll demonstrate this in a bit so that the web viewer inside of FileMaker can read this. And this is only for like a widget, for like a data table or a chart or a progress bar. This isn't for a rich web page that you host on a server somewhere. This is for a specific small use case, one use case widget that is solved in FileMaker. But yes, the data is coming from FileMaker. The data can come from your FileMaker client file.
Yeah, so you are using JavaScript in FileMaker.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and I'll demonstrate that here as we go through here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. What other thoughts or questions do we have about this? Okay, good. Feel free to do that. So again, these are the 3 problems solved. There's a lot of additional benefits to this development environment in particular that I have worked out and made available. And this has all come because of all the work that I've done in JavaScript with the dev shops that I used to work at, and just feeling frustrated when I would lose data and lose the work that I did. So the additional benefits includes these things. It is a repository. It works with the Git flow. Talk about that in a minute. It's the same procedure every time. So once I learn how to set this environment up, I do the same thing every time for every one of my clients, for every one of my widgets, and it just becomes second nature to me, and I'll demonstrate that. It takes me about 2 minutes to set up this environment using my test file, the JS dev file that you saw, and I'm ready to go. But I can hook this up to any app. I think I mentioned this before. I could put this into a client file in just a couple of seconds, where that client file with their real data I can put this widget in there and see how it works inside of their file. So like if, just expand on this a bit, if a client wants a portal replacement, like a data tables thing where we're showing in a web viewer a list of related records, instead of using a portal, I can use a web viewer that's the same size as the portal that it would be replacing. And I would put that on the layout, maybe a copy of the actual layout where it would reside. And then I could start to work with it and start to pull in related records right away and start to see how it looks stylistically with the rest of the layout and such. So there's no concerns that this is separated from a real life app. It's meant to be part of your real life app as soon as possible. So let's just talk about these. Here is the repository. We'll go to it in a minute. It's found on GitHub. It's found on my site, integrating-magic. And this is set up as a template. So by clicking that green button, you can copy this repository and bring it into your GitHub account and get it set up. And again, I'm going to demonstrate this. So it's on GitHub. It's a template that we all can use. And it comes with everything that we need. You can kind of see over there my shoulder. It comes with a couple of folders. There's that jsdev.fmp12 field. Here, I'll make it bigger so you can see it. And it comes with just a couple other things behind it that are under the hood that make this happen. It also what's the next thing? Oh, so this is the method right here that allows me to connect it to any file in for my client. So let's say I'm making a data table, or I guess in this case, it's a C3 chart. I'm making a C3 chart for a client. I can on line 4, give it the name of the client file. And on line 3 there, I can actually put the fully qualified domain name of the server there, so that this is then connected to that file. And the connection is tenuous. It's only used in a couple of instances. So it's not really like there's an unbreakable connection. It's just when I get ready to deploy the code, bringing all that inline code into the file, this is the place to make that connection. I don't actually have to have this set up until I'm ready to do the deploy. I can open up the client file. I can copy in a couple of things from the dev environment. I'll demonstrate that in a bit. And away I go in the client file. Let's see if there are any questions, and I'll go back to those. Nope, not yet. I mentioned that this is a Git flow. That's an additional benefit. Git, if you're not familiar with it, is a very nice way of tracking every single change that you make and storing those changes. And then in cases you need to, you can go back to one of the changes. You can revert the changes. You can do a lot of things that is pretty impossible to do. Yes, we have FileMaker backups, and so we can see the differences. You can use FM comparison maybe to see the differences between a day's worth of work between 2 backups. But this Git flow is really vital to doing long-term development and having all those changes. You can see here I've got 40 commits. Actually, I have way more than this picture shows. But this right here, I've made 40 big changes in here, and I could go back to any one of them at any point and revert back to that change in case this particular commit, the changes that I made here, broke what I was trying to do. So this is vital to development, and I'll demonstrate this a little bit. Okay, so there's some other considerations here, simple considerations. I'll get out of the way as best I can. There we go. Here's some basic considerations. When we're working with this environment in the test mode, in the development mode, we don't have to worry about context so much, but it is important for deploying to a client's app. The web viewer sits on a layout. Layouts have context. The scripting process goes and gets the HTML and then eventually loads it into the web viewer. So really, oh, and it also gets data into the web viewer. In fact, I'll show that here. So here is the development environment. It's just sitting on a layout called JS Dev right above me. And that's where the HTML field is stored. If I bring this into a client app, I have to think about where is this going to go? If this goes on a student record to show related like grades or contacts, the context is way different. And so I have to work with that. I have to understand, where is this HTML, this web viewer getting its HTML from? Where is it getting its data from? But that's easily handled by us FileMaker developers. We also have to consider data in and data out. This is, I think this is an example of what's happening here in this image. After in line 5 there of the web viewer or of the script workspace, I have a function name and it's in the JavaScript line 8 there. In line 10 of the FileMaker script workspace, I'm getting data from that subscript and I'm passing that data in via this argument in line 8 of the JavaScript. And then I'm using that, and I'll demonstrate that all in just a bit. So, but this is how I get data in to FileMaker. And this is how I do every one of my integrations, where I'm using a FileMaker script to actually cause the JavaScript to load the chart or load the data tables or whatever it is. Don't worry, I'll demonstrate that if it's confusing. Getting data out is simple as well. FileMaker.perform script there right above me, line 16 of VS Code. After the user, in this case, presses the submit button, I'm going to grab the data out of that process, and I'm going to pass it to FileMaker. And this is how I do it. I use the FileMaker.perform script function in JavaScript that Claris made, and I give it a script name, and I give it the data that I want to pass back to FileMaker. And then this function call, line 16 above me, causes a FileMaker script of the same name to run, and then it passes the data from the JavaScript into FileMaker. All right. This is an interesting consideration that I think is worth the price of this 100%, is that when I do my coding and I finish it up and it looks good and I think it's done, the client, I deploy this code to the FileMaker field, and I say, all right, client, take a look at it and see what you think. They can come back to me and say, hey, Jeremy, this looks good, but you see like line, the calendar in this case is showing all of the hours of the day. It's showing from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. I say, yep, that's a configuration that I put in the JavaScript right up there on line 67 and in line 69 there. And they could say, that's great, but could you make it to be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.? I say, okay, I'll do that. So I go into my JavaScript, I make that change in those two lines, I run the deploy process again, and it's done. The new code is pushed back into FileMaker, and it's ready for my client to take a look at and see if that works for them. So to me, that's very valuable because I can make 100 changes one at a time, plug them back in, let the client look at them and update them. While I'm on the call, I can run those changes, redeploy those changes after making them, and allow them to see the the data changed. JavaScript also gives us the ability to, I'm gonna skip over this, I guess. A lot of widgets have a lot of different configurations. In this example here, I've got two different charts configurations. You can kind of see that they're different. Up above, the first one there at top on line 6, I've given it a type of bar. In the bottom one here, I don't have a type, so the default of the C3 library is a line chart. So I could have two different configurations for different charts. And let's say, you know, George logs in and they're allowed to see configuration 1 for some reason. I could have FileMaker tell JavaScript, hey, I want you to give me the configuration 1. But if Susie logs in, I can have her see configuration 2. So this two different people can use the same web viewer and see different setups of data. And this just works really nicely. And it's the same, again, it's the same layout. This works really nicely when you want to use one web viewer for many different widgets, or again, different charts or whatnot. So that's just a nice feature of working with JavaScript is this being flexible with the configurations. All right, no more questions. Let's keep going. So I keep coming back to this because this is the extent of it. I've talked a lot here. I've given a lot of explanation, but this is really the heart of it, and it's really all there is to it. Yeah, there's peripheral things like when we deploy and such, but and scripts that you might need to know. But this is the meat of it. This is what makes it so good. Like I said, I've built my whole business on these two screens and my ability to write JavaScript and then deploy it. So this is workable, or I'm in trouble. But this also is what I bring to clients to say, hey, I can build this for you very quickly because I've got this set up. I can easily get it deployed, and then we can make changes as we, in fact, right when we're done here, I have to go into a client's code from 3 months ago, and I have to make a couple of changes and then redeploy it, and it'll be done. So there we go. All right. So let's see. I see a question here. I'll go back to that. Can we let FileMaker client interactively change contestants?
Contents. Sorry, constants in the JSON code. I guess you are changing the parameters of a calendar there, but if you're using a widget that doesn't let the client in the web viewer do all the changes they would like, can I have that? Is there a way to make them insert their own values into the JavaScript code?
Yeah,
So
sure.
And how would that be done?
I can show you that. I'll show you that. I got to write this down so I don't forget. We got good time. This will be good. I don't, we're coming up at the top of the hour, but I'm happy to keep going. I haven't even demonstrated this yet, so we'll keep going through that, and then we'll see if we can hit some of these thoughts here and there. All right, so I'm going to switch over to my JavaScript and FileMaker background, because this is what I spend a lot of my time on. And I'm going to walk through this entire process from start to finish so that you can see what's involved. I've done it 100 times. I've done a lot of them just playing on my own, and it just becomes, very simple to follow through. Here are the steps. I'm going to get the repository, that development environment, from the Integrating Magic site. I'm going to clone the repository so that I bring it from the Integrating Magic account to my own personal account. Then I'm going to download it. That's what clone means. I'm going to download it from GitHub, and I'm going to put it on my local machine. I'm going to then open it up in VS Code, open it up in FileMaker, and I'm going to start up the development server. And those are the steps. Now, don't worry if this gets too crazy and confusing. I am going to go kind of at full speed here, but feel free to stop to ask questions, and I can review anything as after I walk through the entire process. All right, so let's get started. See what's going to happen here. Got to make a few adjustments here. Where are we? All right, so here I am in my web, my screen, and I'm going to start by going over to Integrating Magic. I actually have this bookmarked. Integrating Magic, actually, I'll use this one here. I love profiles, but I always forget which profile is which. So Integrating Magic, right here, I've got a repository called, you can't see, I'll get myself out of the way, called JS Dev Environment right there. Make this a little bit bigger so we can see. Come on, there we go. All right, so here it is. And I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to use this template. I just actually updated this 10 hours ago, so now it's at 52 commits. I have 52 different changes in here. And every day I tinker with it to make sure it's working. All right, so use this template. This is my personal account, and I'm going to give this a repository name. So I'll call this CT user group demo. This is available. Now, I probably want to, if I were doing this for a client, I would actually call it by the client's name and like what problem I'm trying to solve. Data tables, creating a list view or a chart or something, but we'll just go with that. Doesn't matter if it's public or private. If you want to keep the code hidden from anybody, yeah, you want to make it private. And we'll create the repository from the template. Takes a couple seconds. It's grabbing all of the code from that development environment, and it's bringing it into this repository. in my personal account. And now I have all of Jeremy's changes that he did over the last, many, many moons. It doesn't bring it, it just brings in the latest code. So you don't get all the 52 changes that I made. It just brings in the latest because that's the production version, the one that you want. Okay, so this is the first step. The second step is to get the code and clone it down onto my local machine. So I'm going to click on this code button and copy the clone URL here. Okay. Then I'm going to open up terminal. So I'll bring that up. Terminal is just what I'm using to do this work. We do need to, come on, terminal, why isn't it? All right, let's try that again. Terminal, there we go. Okay, so I'll bring over terminal so you can see it. I'm gonna clear this. Okay, so if you're not scared of command line, is a pretty decent place to work. I'm getting more and more familiar with it as I do this work because it's kind of just part of what I do now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change directory into a folder where I want this code to reside. Remember, I'm going to bring down all this code from the internet and I'm going to put it onto my local machine. When I do that, by the way, I get a nice connection between what's up on the server, the GitHub server, and what I have on my local machine. So any changes I make locally, I can eventually push up into the cloud, and those are stored there forever. And anybody can get them, anybody in my organization. So I want to change directory into a file or into a folder where I store all my stuff. And I actually store all my stuff in a folder called JS Work. So I'm simply going to drag this folder over here and it picks up the path for that folder. And there we go. So now I'm in that directory. And that's where I store all my stuff. So I'll show you that directory. This directory has 20 or so items. This is just one of my many folders that I hold repositories in. But the last one I put in today was the full calendar one at 9:15 a.m. Now I'm going to go ahead and clone this work. Yes, I will post a link to the GitHub repo. I'll just do that right now, actually, so that I don't forget. There we go. Here is, let's see if we can find the chat. There we go. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so we're done with the browser. We don't need that anymore. Don't need this anymore. So I'm in this folder. I'm in the repository, or I'm in the directory, and now I'm going to type in git clone and press Command V on my Mac to paste in this URL of the development environment. When I do this, it will go up to the internet. It will grab the repository that's in its current version, and it will bring it down onto my local machine. There we go. And we'll just put the Finder window here because we'll show it. It's going to go and grab it. So let's do that. Boom. Wait, what did I do? Oh, I copied the wrong thing. Sorry. I forgot, or I overrode my Command V with the link. All right, so where is that? It is right here. Oh, here it is. Okay, so go back here. Gotta make it smaller. There we go. Code, copy. All right, let's try that again. Git clone, paste in that. That's my user group demo. And boom, I press it. And just a couple of seconds, or milliseconds really, because it's such a small repository, it already downloaded it. Everything that was up there is now here in this app. And we can compare them side by side and see that to be the case. If you've ever worked with with GitHub, this is just, it's bread and butter. It's what it does. Got that FileMaker file. I've got an index.html. I've got my index, my JS and my CSS files, and a package JSON, which we'll look at in a bit. Now, if it's the first time that you ever do this, you really actually have to first install some items on your machine. And I have that documented here at this site called jsnfm.com. In the development environment, in the under the hood, and before you begin, it talks about what you need to have on your machine. You need to use FileMaker 19, VS Code, terminal, sign up for a GitHub account, and you need to install Node.js and Git. And then if you walk through this for this, you'll know what you need to do. By the way, the quick start here is I'm just reciting the quick start from memory. So if I'm going too fast, you can walk through this, and I've described here what is happening. Okay. So that's jsnfm.com. All right, so I've got it now. I've cloned it. I brought it down. I'm going to change directory and go into that. Actually, I'm not going to do that, because now that I'm done with terminal, I can go to VS Code and simply open up that folder. Let's see, desktop, JS work, and click on that repository that I just installed or downloaded and open. And now that same folder structure, file structure is present here and is almost ready for me to use. Okay, so I've got it open in VS Code. That's great. The next thing I need to do, and this seems like a lot, but again, it's pretty fast, is I need to install this code into this directory so that it will work. This package.json file, this is pretty standard for any web development stuff, lists information about the package, the repository. It has some scripts that we'll get into later, and it has some dependencies, or in this case, dev dependencies. If there's any dependencies as in this or dev dependencies, when I need to install this onto my machine, and when I do that, it will go and grab all those resources, and it will load them into this directory only, so that the underlying code that makes this whole thing work is present. Now, I've done this presentation many times. A big question that comes up is this safe? Are these dependencies safe? And I'm going to say, a qualified yes. I work hard to update these things as the authors of these things find that they need to update theirs. So I work hard to make sure that this is correct, but there is some trust involved with the people who wrote these libraries, but again, and that's a whole topic that I don't want to dwell on at this moment. We can talk about it later, but Parcel is a well-known development environment library, so I feel safe in downloading their work. So I'm going to, in my browser here, in my terminal inside of VS Code, I'm going to type in npm install, and that will go to the internet and find all of these libraries and install them into my machine, into this directory. What it did is it created this huge folder here called node modules, where all of the underlying code is stored. So anything that is going to be used in this process is stored here. Most of this will never be installed into the FileMaker field in that inlined code that I showed. It's only here for using in this setup, in this environment. All right, so I've installed it. Now I'm ready to start it up. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to open up the FileMaker file, jsdev.fmp12, reveal in Finder, open this. All right. When this file opens, it starts up in development mode. And that just tells when I load this, that just tells FileMaker which place to look for the code. Do I want to look at this development URL, or do I want to look at the field where code is stored? The code that comes with this is right here, and it's just really basic. There's nothing exciting about it. I got to change the name of those. So it's in development mode. So it's not looking for that code. It's going to bypass that HTML field here. Instead, it's going to be looking for this development URL called localhost 1234. And the way that I get this to work is over here in VS Code, I say npm start. This command will build my code, and then it will serve it to this local host, this URL 1234, that is now available for any of my browsers as well as FileMaker. In fact, if I go to this browser, I can type in localhost 1234, and there's the exact same thing that FileMaker is showing. And there we go. Now I don't use the browser because I'm more interested in what does it look like in FileMaker, and how do I work with FileMaker data in it, and how do I get FileMaker to control this and be controlled by this. So I'm not going to use the browser, but here it is. And now, because this development server is running, and because this web viewer is listening to that URL, changes that I make in here by going to the index.html and copying this line and pasting it, I wait just a half a second, and it re-renders the web viewer with that change made. I do suggest that people Command S to save it, to save over here in VS Code. But FileMaker, for the most part, is going to pick up those changes and re-render it. It's only going to pick up the changes when I'm working in the HTML here. If I go to the JavaScript file and I change something here, I'm going to press Command S. No, maybe not. Let's see. Nope, it picked it up too. There are some instances where it just breaks the connection or breaks the rendering, and it's just a matter of repressing the load web viewer to refresh it. Okay. So now I'm ready to do my code. I'm ready to do the coding. I'm ready to work with whatever I'm trying to do. If I'm trying to build a data table or a charting system or whatever, I have the entire environment set up and I'm ready to go. And if you don't mind, I mean, if you want, I'll keep going for a little bit here, but and I'll kind of get further into like developing a C3 chart, for example. But this is the extent of it. And I can spend hours in this one file and in this HTML file, and I could get it perfect. So let's do some things here. I'm going to go into the CSS, and I'm just going to add to the H1, I'm going to add a background color of red. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to take the button and I'm going to do background color blue. I don't know, I'm just picking things, and then we'll do font color white. Okay, it's looking okay. It's pretty bad, but you know. Let's see here. What else could I do? I removed the bootstrap. That's fine. All right, so let's pretend this is really bad, but let's pretend that this is perfect for the client. The client says, yep, this is exactly what I wanted. You showed some text, you have a button, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. okay, that's great. I'm done developing as the FileMaker developer in JavaScript. So I can deploy this code. So the first thing I need to do is break the server connection. Right now, this local host is running, the development server is running, and I'm going to press Control-C to just stop the server from running. So the next time I run this, actually, well, it's still loaded. The next time I run this in development mode, it's not going to find anything because this local host URL is no longer running. If I turn off dev mode and I run it, it's now looking at that HTML field right here. And you notice that it's the original code. So that, oops, there we go. That's not very good. That's not what I want. That's not what the client wanted. The client wanted what this is, npm start. This is what the client wanted. Okay, so I need to get this code that I've fixed and made beautiful into this FileMaker file. So I'm going to do that. Stop the server again, turn off dev mode. It's still loading the old stuff. Over here in VS Code, I'm going to run a script called npm run build upload. What this does really quickly, because this is a small HTML file, is it created an inline version of it right here. And it then caused FileMaker to run a script, and which happens to be called upload to HTML. That script ran. And this script, this FileMaker script, then grabbed the code out of this folder, and it pushed it into that field. So now I've got this right here. That's interesting. Shoot, something broke. It's not supposed to do that. I have to figure that out. All right, I have to redo something. I have to go back and make a non-CSS change. So let's just put the 3 periods, 3 exclamation points in there. Click me. All right. So I made some changes, and I'm going to rerun that deploy file. It creates a version of it. It reloads it. And now I've got the deployed code inside of this FileMaker fields, and you can see the changes here. And it's deployed. It's ready to go. That's surprising that CSS failed. So I have to fix that. I'll have to do that after this. But that's the gist of this, is being able to make any changes over here and deploy them. And I could do this 500 times to please the client, to solve the use case, whatever. All right. So I'm going to see if there are any questions. The biggest question is, the most recent question is, there's quite a few questions here. How do you print the contents of a web viewer charts? I can answer that. I'll answer that at the end after I get through this process here. It's a little bit convoluted, but we can come up with an answer. Another question that came up that I see, and you may see, is, let's look at it, see if I can find it here. There it is. The last question there says, how good at JavaScript do you have to be to integrate it with FileMaker? Good question. You have to know some parts of JavaScript, and I'm leading people into knowing that. I actually got started not knowing any JavaScript and just copying JavaScript libraries and figuring out how to put them into a text field or many text fields. So you don't need to know a whole lot to get started. But luckily, there are many people in the community now that have JavaScript experience and can lead you through that. And I can provide a resource as well after this. All right. So before I go back to that, that's the gist of it. I know I didn't do any cool things with charting or whatever. That wasn't the point of this. And I'm happy to come back and do more along those lines. We can work together in creating a C3, a chart in a web viewer for some of data out of your app, so we can spread this out and each person work with their own data, but we all work together to make a chart. I can certainly do that. The point of this was to really show this entire development environment so that people can know that it is possible to use JavaScript in FileMaker. So there's that. Question just came up. Are there any differences between using the web viewer JavaScript solutions between Windows and Mac clients? I have a mixed different environment. There used to be a lot of problems with using web viewers in Windows. That was legend in the FileMaker community. It's almost, I think all of it's gone at this point. Anything that you can do in Windows, in Mac, in this space, you can do in Windows. The only differences would be OS level stuff, like a button may be a different shape, have less refined round edges in Windows, but it's still going to function. The only other difference is if a particular library that you're using or JavaScript you're writing just doesn't work in Windows, it's not made for it. But I don't think that that's true anymore. So I don't think there's any differences, Troy, anymore. There might be some crazy edge cases, but not right now. Okay, so I know this was a lot. I hopefully gave you some inspiration or some relief that we can work with JavaScript and FileMaker. Almost all of the issues are gone. And we're good. We're done for all practical purposes, but you don't have to walk away and never look at this again, because I'm working hard as part of my business to develop a community of JavaScript and FileMaker people, people that want to just focus on JavaScript and just talk about that and learn from each other and ask questions. Every Wednesday at 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 9 p.m. Eastern time, I hold office hours in this community space. There's an events space that shows where those are. And it's just a place that we can come together and we can talk about just this thing. Not talking about the value of, or like what kind of primary keys to use. We're just talking about how to work with JavaScript and FileMaker. And also how to use this development environment. I give a lot of tips on, using the language itself, and other people as well do. So I encourage you to sign up for that. It's community.jsinfm.com. There's a link on the jsinfm.com site, but I encourage you to be a part of that and get in there. There is some free stuff. There is some subscription-based stuff, but all of it is there for people to learn JavaScript and feel more comfortable using JavaScript and FileMaker. I can retire when I have savings and when every FileMaker developer is using JavaScript in at least a project a year. I would rest easy if there's no that. And also, of course, the JSNFM site, that's where I'm continually updating the information. In fact, let me go back to that. I'll show you one thing on that, JSN. I've gotten a lot of questions about the environment itself. Let me just show that quick here. Where did that go? Here we go. So this web page is where I'm documenting all the uses of it, or just how to get through it. There's the learning path, which isn't finished, but this development environment describes everything that I talked about, and you can go through this and just read through this in detail and see what's happening, so that you understand, like, what is this index.js file? What is parcel? I've mentioned parcel a couple times, so you can go and read about that and what its use is in this system. So I'm getting through these documentations. I'm going to work on these more tonight, but this is a good place to go, as well as the community to, oh, my community isn't. I need to put that in here. Yeah, so this is a great place to go to get into it and start working with it. And with the community site, I'm never going to leave people out in the cold. I really am interested in having people be here and ask questions and help each other out. So please, in fact, I linked to this group here to get, I think Jessica is here. Hi. So that you can, be part of this community. All right. I've talked a lot. Curious if you have any final questions. Let's see. Oh, here's a couple more. Good question. Good question. The browser development tools are important for debugging things like dependencies and network issues. There is a way to reveal them with a web viewer in the terminal command. Yes, there is. And so I've kind of skipped over this, but the web viewer has the development environment set up. Yeah. It has a debugging environment set up where you can go in and see all of the errors that you made. I use this constantly. I have it open underneath my development environment. And this is done by right-clicking on the web viewer and pressing inspect element. It's not on by default in FileMaker. I wish it were, but Beeswax has the Beeswax debugger. They have an article, and I'll link to this, how to enable the WebKit. That's what this is in JavaScript debugging and FileMaker web viewers. You have to quit FileMaker completely and run this line in the terminal. And then it should, when you start up FileMaker again, this should be available. Yes, this is important. It's very useful for writing and seeing what's going wrong. And that's a topic for another time. That's discussed or will be discussed more in my JSN FM and in the community. Tip, make sure you're editing the index.html file. Yes, stay out of the dist file. This is the inline version of it. It's not in any way nice to read. In fact, as your code gets longer and longer, this is going to become even worse. So yes, stay out of the dist folder and stick with the top level stuff. That's just, you'll just get used to that as you're working on this. Basic pivot table solution out there. Yes, I've got one. Feel free to contact me and be glad to work with you on that. I can get it created for you pretty dang quickly. In fact, let's just do this. Just one more shameless plug. Sorry about that, but guys got to eat. This is my site, Integrating Magic. Again, being worked on. There's a place to schedule a chat if you want to talk about this or other JavaScript stuff. You can join the community, but you can also be part of. You can also give me a shout, and we can talk about putting a pivot table or teaching you and your team how to work with JavaScript. The last question is, yes, I am working on a class similar to Alexis Allen's. She was a great inspiration in that. And actually my community section, I know she uses the same platform, at least that's what they've told me, is I've got a training space here where I'm working on posts for all of the exercises that I have taught over the years in the various training sessions I've done at DevCon and blog posts that I've written when I was at Geist Interactive. So if this is a subscription based, so that's how I'm running this. If there's interest, I'll be glad to do live sessions. I was trying this too, but I would love to work with people live in a environment and over 10 weeks and get you good at using JavaScript and FileMaker. There we go. So that is the JavaScript development environment. I encourage you to try it out, and I encourage you to be part and get involved with this community. I know there's tons of communities, but this is an important skill. Or reach out and be glad to help you get some JavaScript in your apps. So there we go. That is it for today. Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate that. Yeah. All right, Justin, how was that? There you go. I'm throwing it back to you.
That was great. Thank you, Jeremy. So thank you everybody for joining today. Normally at this time, we'll discuss what we're looking to do for next month. So does anybody have anything that they either would like to present to the team or any topics that they would be interested in learning more about? And we can go and find somebody who is an expert at that, like Jeremy is in JavaScript, and have them come in and teach us some things. So I'm opening that up to the group.
A few weeks ago, I actually went on Upwork and found a MongoDB expert and got a sort of a 1-hour tutorial. I ran through some questions that I asked about how you might implement the kind of data structure that we're used to doing in FileMaker and MongoDB. And he told me lots of interesting stuff. I got a recording of it, which rambles on a bit because I kept asking questions and going off at tangents. But if you got 20 minutes or so, I could just sort of give an outline of that and performance issues with MongoDB and how it works in very general terms, because I'm by no means an expert.
All right, that works. So we could do that. Would it be possible, Oliver, for you to reach out to that person and see if they'd be interested in talking to the group?
I think they would. He's not a FileMaker guy. He's a Node.js guy. He doesn't know anything about FileMaker. So I don't know if that would really work, and we'd have to pay him. So
Okay.
I know that's new for a lot of FileMaker people, but so I don't know if that's the best way. I mean, if there was somebody within this group or in the FileMaker community who really knew MongoDB, and I haven't found anybody yet, I'm sure they're out there. So that would be good to basically help us drill down in some, if people ask questions that I can't answer or whatever. But I'm happy to do that. Or if you want to really get the real thing and find somebody who really does know it, that would be great.
No, definitely sounds great for you to give that presentation on that. That sounds great. Is there anything else, any other topics anybody has any interest in learning more about?
Well, this whole Mango thing is kind of interesting and new to me. If somebody has wanted to give an overview of, how it, yeah, I understand the NoSQL thing, but I need a little bit more than that, and how it might actually work with the FileMaker. As I understand it, FileMaker would be just kind of the front end to a Mango engine, but maybe that isn't right.
Oh yeah, some of the issues I went into, if you've got a relational model, a normalized database, and you want to actually, and they're going to move that into MongoDB for you and build relationships in Mongo, which you can do, how efficient that really is, actually. Now, efficient's a relative term. He did say, I mean, I gave him an example of one of my clients' data structures, and he said, you should use Oracle for that. Because this is going to be way slower than Oracle if you build this in Mongo. But on the other, way slower than Oracle is still probably a great deal faster than FileMaker. So, so I don't know that. And there are tools that you can add on to manage the redundancies and relations and so on that Mongo. I can do the whole thing now, but I'll wait and do it next time.
Okay. Justin, also, if you could, this went a little quickly tonight, especially the part about how you connect the GitHub to the JS code or the Visual Studio code. Is there a recording of this of tonight somewhere?
Yes, there's a recording and we'll post it in our IO group. So if anybody would like to join that group, feel free to leave your email address in the chat and we'll add you to that group. And then once this is over and we get the recording, we'll send that link out to everybody so that they can go and download it and have that.
Great. Thank you.
All right, awesome. All right, so it looks like MongoDB will be a topic for next month, and unless anybody else has any other topics, speak now, or you can mention them in the group, or reach out to me or anybody on the Keologic team, and we'd be happy to investigate the topics that you have that you're interested in learning more about. All right. So with that, is there anything else anybody would like to bring up? Any other items they'd like to discuss before we close off for the night? Nope. All right. Great.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you,
Jeremy,
everybody.
and,
Thank
this
you,
is
Jeremy,
your-
very much.
Good night, everyone.
All right.